So the straight line system is basically what I used back in the day, starting 30 years ago, to take all those young kids who were not natural born salespeople and turn them into world-class closers, selling, high ticket items. The average trade investment was $500,000 to $1 million. And these were from people that we never met before, speaking on the phone strictly, no video chat back then. And it was a very effective way of essentially transferring certainty that you have about something to someone else. In other words, the idea is that, you're the salesperson. You're very, very certain that your product, good or service is the best fit for them. And they're just not as certain. They don't know all the features, benefits, and whatnot. So the straight line system allows you in a way that doesn't break rapport, doesn't piss people off. It allows you to get them very, very certain that your product, good or service is the best.
And what are some of the key parts of the straight line sales system that are the core to its performance?
So the thing about the straight line, it's an end-to-end solution from literally the first word out of your mouth, from the time the conversation, the encounter starts, all the way to even after the sale, and how you leverage off of a sale to get referrals, create customers for life, and so forth, right? So there's different strategies that apply to different parts of the sale. But the basic philosophy is that human beings as a species, we know when we're in the presence of an expert intuitively. We know very quickly. And when we're in the presence of a novice. Now, what happens is when we're in the presence of someone that we perceive to be an expert, we tend to defer to that person and allow them to control the flow of the encounter. Conversely, if we're in a conversation or a sales encounter with someone that we believe is a novice or beneath us, or not as, not as schooled in this subject as we are, then we will try to control the flow of the encounter. It's a natural inclination to take control. So what I noticed way back in the day when I was first inventing the system was that there was this huge discrepancy between my closing rate and one guy that I trained, this guy Danny, the junior partner from Stratton in the movie, the Donnie character, right? And everyone else at my firm, I had a 50% close rate. Danny had one in the high 30s, and my kids were closing 0. Yet they were saying the same words, pitching the same people, the same stock. And I'm like, why the discrepancy? What was it? What was that X factor? And it started with this moment of clarity I had, where I'm like, wait a second, in those first few seconds of the conversation, I was being perceived a certain way. And because of that, it essentially induced people to allow me to control the flow of the encounter. So while I was able to then run a strategy, because once you're in control, once you're in the one calling the shots, you can ask questions, you can establish certain things, versus if the other party is in control, you're like covering up by they're asking you questions, barrage, they're interrupting you. So it's almost impossible to close at a high level if the other party is in control of the encounter. So the first basic tenet of the straight line system is that you must take immediate control of the sale. The $1 million question is how? How do you do that, right?
My next question. Yeah.
Of course, right? Because and I think that the problem with a lot of sales systems is that they might say something, you have to control the encounter, and they never tell you exactly how to do that, But the thing with the straight line system is very granular in the sense that it shows you exactly how you take control of any sale. What are the things that, you say? What is the way you say it? What body language can you? So essentially, those first few seconds of a sale, when you're being essentially ripped apart, put back together, compartmentalized by the prospect, right? And they either put you in one bucket, which is that you're sharp, you're on the ball. Number 2, that you're enthusiastic about what you're doing. And number 3, most important of all, that you're an expert in your field. So if you end up in that bucket, expert, sharp, on the ball, enthusiastic, your prospect will defer to. They'll allow you to control the sale because what they're thinking is this is a person worth listening to. And even one higher level still is because they can help me achieve my goals. They can help me get what I want. We always seek out experts to help us solve our problems, to eliminate our pain. And that has been conditioned into us since we were big. Our parents took us to the doctors when we were sick or 5 years old, right? And you watch that even your own parents, they would defer to this expert doctor who went to school and was taught everything there was to know. And when the doctor asked you questions, you didn't interrupt the doctor or cut the doctor off. Your parents didn't say, "Excuse me, doctor, why are you asking that?" How about when the doctor asks you a question, you answer them honestly, you answer them forthrightly. The same thing happens when you're in the presence of a great lawyer. You get in trouble with the law or the police, you hire an attorney. The lawyer asks you questions. You don't cut the lawyer off. You don't interrupt the lawyer. We've been conditioned to essentially act a certain way when we believe that we're in the presence of an expert. So the idea is that in those first few seconds of a conversation, you must be perceived a certain way. And the way you end up doing that is through tonality and body language, not through the words that you say. The words are very simple. What can you really, if it happens in 4 or 5 seconds, what could you possibly say to someone in 4 seconds? "Hey, Bill, I'm sharp as a tack. I swear, I'm an expert." And they'd say, "What the fuck is," they wouldn't even do it. Right? So the words don't really exist. Now, obviously, you're not going to say, "Hi, I'm a moron. Nice to meet you." I'm not. The words are the words. They're very basic. They're simple. Yeah. It's more about how you say them, how you carry yourself, how you make eye contact. All right. And the human brain is incredibly perceptive like this. And we have this instant gut reaction. Expert, novice. If you fall into the expert category, what happens, it opens up a universe of possibilities. And that's when the rest of the straight line kicks in. So without that first step, there is no straight line. The straight line is you moving the sale forward along a predetermined path, which you believe is the path of least resistance. But you can only do that if you're in control.
Yeah, sure. And you established a system more than 25 years ago now. Is that right?
Yeah, it was actually it was 32 years ago.
32 years ago.
And what happened was, it was just so shocking what happened when I first hit on it. These kids went from not being able to close sales to becoming the top brokers on Wall Street, making millions and millions a year. I was making 50 million plus a year. And then since then, when the firm closed in 1997, everyone spread out and they brought diluted versions of the system to all different industries. Automobile, insurance, every type of sales you could think of, jets or the jet sale. Art, you name it, right? And then eventually, when I made the movie and then I became famous, I got involved and released a very, very, authoritative version of the official version of the system, which really goes into it in a very, very deep way. And then I wrote a book about it. And of course that, this became huge bestsellers and people use it all over the world. It's very, very powerful. It's very, very effective. I always say, people could love me or hate me, but they never say my system doesn't work.
Yeah. It's a great system. And so has it changed much since you've developed it?
It has. It's changed a lot. The core of it hasn't changed much. What's changed about it is that the ethics and integrity surrounding the system. In other words, the ability to close is a very powerful tool. It's like a crucial tool to succeed in life. And like anything that has power, that power can be used for good or ill. And when I was very young, I developed this system. It was very powerful, but I didn't really embed in it the sort of the ethics and integrity side, like not to use it to just basically rip people's eyeballs out and make them send you money. Because you can, with the straight line system, you can get people to do things they shouldn't do, buy things they shouldn't buy. And I urge people not to do that. I don't teach it that way. I teach I teach it even more power. It's much more powerful now than it was back then, because I've had 30 years to improve it and I just make it absolute. But it's also it's entirely ethical, and it's all about, getting people to take actions they should be taking and not lying, not exaggerating, but really being able to essentially transfer the certainty. I'll go back to this idea of certainty that you have a product and you believe in it, that it's awesome, it's great, it's going to help the prospect. They don't know that. How do you get them to understand how great your product is in a way that seems genuine, that doesn't break rapport? That's really what the straight line does.